afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I want to welcome you to today's session of Good Grief. It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you, beautiful people, and to definitely be here with my co-host on today, the beautiful Kim Possible 711. How you doing, sis?
Hey there, how you doing?
Hey, how are things going on this Fresh Start Friday?
Whew, it's rainy in the ATL today. So, when it's rainy, I feel a little bleh, but all is well because eyes alive.
Come on, come
So
on.
all is well.
We've got rain here in the Dallas as well. Hello, Rebel.
Hello, rebels.
We got rain here in Dallas as well. And I'm just going to say, I'm cold. I've been cold all day long. It's just chilly. So
Listen,
I'm trying to make that adjustment.
I ran in the house, took my shoes off, didn't put my fluffy house shoes on, sitting here barefoot, and my feet is cold.
Listen to Rebel talking about I likes it. No. See,
Now,
she's one of those that was praying for the cold, and we
listen,
bind that spirit.
STL, I'm gonna have to, I don't know if I'm gonna have to rebuke you or what, but we likes the fall.
Oh,
Not winter, but fall, sweater weather.
you have let
Stop.
the devil, that spirit in Rebel done jumped off on
Oh,
you.
Lord, I love it.
You know,
Love it.
they tell you in church, be careful who you sit next to, because that spirit might that spirit might jump off on you.
For somebody born in July, I can't stand summertime. I like it's too hot. I would rather it be 60, 52. I mean, just anywhere in there. Just cool where I could put on some stuff.
I ain't gonna be able to do it. Jonna CPW, there's my girl. Good afternoon.
Hey,
So much love to you, Jonna. It's so good to see you in the Lions Den for Good Grief. Thank you for coming in.
MCP 812.
Come on, they're coming in.
Afternoon, everybody.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Yes, thank you, Rebel. I am in the right spirit. I know I am.
Listen.
I know I am.
That spirit done jumped off on you. Truck driver. That's my Mufasa. Good to see you, MCP 812. All of you. It's so good to have you. SK 8843. I see you. Come through, sis.
Hey.
So much love to you. Just by way of a very brief announcement, we're just sending up prayers, but we got some life in for Crazy Berry Town. So she's going to step away for just a moment until life kind of calms down. But we're still here, and Kim Possible 711 is going to take the helm and just lead us fearlessly on. And so, we all have those phases where things are going on. Things are just going on. So we're going to continue to, we will definitely miss Crazy Berry Town, and she definitely is sending all kinds of mad love and everything else. But until life kind of calms down a little bit, we're going to give her a little bit of a break.
That's right.
Everybody needs a break.
Yes, so I heard that word today for the first time, lifing.
Yes. Life is lifing.
Life is lifing.
Life is definitely lifing. I want to give all kinds of mad love to MCP 812, who has made that 1 year anniversary journey. I was so glad to see your comments in the Win Telephone, the Win Phone, MCP 812. And thank you for sharing that. And thank you for utilizing that. It's there. Let me just stop and mention that briefly. The Win Phone is available to anyone that needs to just have that opportunity to have that outward expression with your loved ones. I know a lot of times we have thoughts that we hold dear in our heads and within ourselves, but sometimes there's something about that Win Phone and that release that it really is very impacting. And for those of you that are transparent and sharing and doing that, I want to say thank you to you as well. But sending you all kinds of mad love still, MCP 812. So, and everybody that's here as we're on this journey of grief. I thought about it, Kim, when you, a few weeks back, may even been a couple of months now, and you were saying everybody was like or not everybody, but you did get responses back of people saying they still feel alone in the statement of, you are not alone and we're right here with you. So I had to go back and kind of walk that back, and we're here to walk it with you if and when and whatever way we can. But I understand the totality of when you're in that thing, it's just you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You feel like you're alone, even though you are not alone.
Yes.
It feels like a very isolated experience that you are having, but it's a universal experience that all of us will have at some point.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Amen. Yes, the Win Phone is a wonderful tool. Thanks so much for all you ladies do. You are so welcome. It is a pleasure to be here with you.
Absolutely. Well, Kim, take it away. What direction do you want to go today? I'm following the leader.
So a couple of weeks ago, Crazy Berry Town introduced us to a podcast that Anderson Cooper has done in response to the loss of his mother and his process of going through grief. And I started listening to it last week, and I got through 2 episodes. And so today, just wanted to highlight an interview that he had with Stephen Colbert. So the first episode is really talking about
sorry about that.
The fact that he is having to clean out his mother's apartments. And if you didn't know, Anderson Cooper's mother was Gloria Vanderbilt, and she had 2 apartments. One was her main place that she lived, and then the other was like for all of her stuff, like her art and her, clothes and just stuff that she had collected over the years. And so he's going through this process of cleaning it out, and he decided to do this podcast, never done one before, and just to help himself process through what that means to have lost his 95-year-old mother, because age is irrelevant when you're losing a loved one. Doesn't matter how long they were here. Now he does not have his mother with him. So, there are moments when he breaks down. There are moments when he talks about the loss of his dad and his brother. And so the second episode was with the Late Show host, Stephen Colbert. And he had talked with him right after his mother died in 2019. And so 3 years later, he does this podcast with him to really unpack a statement that Stephen Colbert made about his journey through loss. And so STL is going to cue that up for us. It's about 4 minutes long. It's just a snippet of a larger interview. And then we'll come back and discuss what we hear.
You told an interviewer that you have learned to, in your words, love the thing that I most wish had not happened.
I remember.
You went on to say, what punishments of God are not gifts? Do you really believe that?
Yes. It's a gift to exist. It's a gift to exist. And with existence comes suffering. There's no escaping that. And I guess I'm either a Catholic or a Buddhist when I say those things, because I've heard those from both traditions. But I didn't learn it that I was grateful for the thing I most wish hadn't happened, is that I realized it. Mm-hmm. Is that, and it's an oddly guilty feeling.
It doesn't mean you are happy.
I don't want it to have happened. I want it to not have happened.
Right.
But
is this a commercial right here?
I guess so, because I have.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Grateful for your life, which I think is a positive thing to do. Not everybody is, right. And I'm not always, but it's the most positive thing to do. Then you have to be grateful for all of it. You can't pick and choose what you're grateful for. And then, so what do you get from loss? You get awareness of other people's loss.
Well, that's true. Empathy.
Which allows you to connect with that other person,
right.
Which allows you to love more deeply and to understand what it's like to be a human being, if it's true that all humans suffer.
Right.
My parents' anniversary is around now. I'm not exactly sure. It's around now, 1943, I think. So, and mom and dad would be 100 at this point this year, or next year. Anyway, we don't celebrate their anniversary. And I thought, why don't we celebrate their anniversary? We should celebrate their anniversary. They're like, well, for that matter, why don't we celebrate Popsy and, and Mimi's anniversary, like mom's parents? Well, why don't we celebrate their anniversary? Because we owe our existence to all these people who came behind us. And that anniversary was so important to those people. That was celebrated by everybody. It seems odd that important, celebratory, happy thing then just gets lost by the next generation. We know something about their history, but we're not necessarily celebrating their lives.
Even their...
that's like a responsibility that we have, but you just can't do it all.
I have to look up the date of my dad's birthday, but I can tell you his death day. And those are the days that, I think about. And I feel like that's totally inverted and wrong. That I have a friend whose brother died by suicide, and he was saying to me recently, I had a cake for my brother's birthday, and it just blew me away that he would do that. I mean, I like that idea, but it's not something, I don't know. I'm not sure I can. I don't know.
I have a friend, Allison Silverman, who suggested that I light a candle on the anniversary of her mother's death every year and just think about her. And I do that.
I mean, I was going to talk about Democratic candidates, but honestly, after this,
they're all great.
Yeah.
All of the Democratic candidates are fantastic. I would vote for any of them. Any of them.
But it's interesting when you talk.
Maybe not to Biden.
When you talked, I talked to Biden recently, and I watched the interview that you do with Biden. And again, communicating with him about loss and about grief, he is, whatever you think of his politics, he is extraordinary in his ability and willingness to connect with you on loss, to connect with other people.
Cannot doubt that the guy has a good heart.
Stephen Colbert on politics and grief. He's really an extraordinary guy. And I thought it was an extraordinary conversation. I appreciate him taking the time. And we're going to show it again, 360 special hour, the Stephen Colbert interview Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. I really encourage you to watch it.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So the first statement that he made was that he had learned to love the thing that he wished had not happened. And what if the punishments of God are not gifts? I think we got to start with the first line, though. What? He had learned to love the thing that he most wished had not happened. And so as I thought about that statement, I don't know that I'm there yet. Because I think I may still be at a place of anger around why did it have to happen? And when I say it, I could be talking about a myriad of people that I've lost that I love dearly. I can understand the loss of my grandmother. She was an older person, but she died of cancer. So in my mind, she died sooner than she should have died. That cancer took her life. Same is true with my spiritual mom, who, even though she was 74, that's still not long enough because she still had life to live. She still had, in my mind and in my heart, more to impart to me, more prayers to pray, grandchildren to watch grow up, et cetera, et cetera. So I think in hearing, because I've heard the totality of his story, he got to a realization that if life is a series of good things and bad things, and if we're ever going to be grateful for life, then we have to be grateful for the entirety of the life, knowing that we don't get out of life without suffering.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be suffering. There's going to be loss. And so, yeah, the question why yet resonates.
Yeah.
Because we can't deny that as Black people, and particularly Black mothers who have lost Black children in senseless ways, you can't ever make sense out of that. You can't ever come to a place of, you learn to love the thing that you wish had never happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that he's saying that from a white male perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to ask a Black man or a Black woman the same question, I don't know that I would ever get to that level or place of awareness, because our story and our dynamic is very different. And our history is very different. So we're still grieving stuff that happened 400 years ago.
Right.
We may just be grieving his mother, his dad, and his brothers, but we are grieving generations of things that, when we lose another person, brings that still yet to the surface. So yes. Your thoughts?
I think that you hit the nail on the head, the difference between, in my opinion, the Black community and the white community, and not to make it a racial thing, but our losses are just compounded because it seems like they never stop. And we've had so much loss that we've had to deal with. You never get a chance to catch your breath. And then you have the scenario of instances where, definitely through COVID, because the Black community was tremendously impacted, I'm going to say disproportionately to our white counterpart communities. So we were losing a lot more family members a lot quicker and a lot more frequently than those that had good health care and could go in and get the best of treatment and the best of medications and stuff like that. Or, even have somebody that would listen to them at all. I can remember my mother was in the hospital for a fall during COVID, but they were going, you couldn't even get the people to listen to you. I really had to stand guard with her to get medical care, just to have them listen. So we have so much trauma. I guess that's what I'm trying to get to, that we have to deal with. But I think the flip side of that, I have a friend that has been trying to help me walk through the journey of grief in a more personal way, as it relates, probably the most impacting. I think all of them are impacting, but the most impacting are my nephew and my mom, and they were close in proximity. Now, that being said, in 1996, I lost my aunt, my father's sister, and then 3 days later, my father. And then the day after my father's funeral, his niece. And then right after that, my nephew's grandfather. All four of those in the course of less than 2 weeks. It's just unbelievable. But with that situation, even though it was impacting, it still didn't impact me the same way as my nephew and my mother, close proximity. So again, because the trauma, I think, of the pandemic was going on. So, not only did I lose them, but I lost several church members that were friends of mine. And I mean, the numbers were so high. I think you're very, very accurate in the loss isn't as, I don't want to say easy, but as embraced the same way for those that have not had just nonstop trauma that just doesn't quit. And that's the Black community. However, I do want to get to this real quickly. My friend is trying to walk me through, and we talk a lot about getting to the point and place of celebration instead of just having the heaviness of the grieving. Can we get to a point of celebration? So that, I think I've tried to embrace the idea, and I think that may be, when I listen to him talking about the thing that he didn't like and never wanted to happen, he's grown to love that, to really come to a point of being able to embrace it for what it is and appreciate. And I think for me, particularly with my mother, and this may not be with everybody, but particularly for me, I remember so poignantly as she was passing, because I did bring her home, and she was home with me for 3 days before she actually passed away in hospice care. And my siblings and all got to see her and be with her, which we would not have had if I had not been able to bring her home because of COVID. And I can remember as she was passing and she was lying on the bed and I was talking to her in the middle of the night. It was just she and I. And I remember holding her hand. I remember looking at her hands and saying to myself, these hands have worked untiringly, almost nonstop, and they need rest. And I remember that being a very vivid memory of me stopping for a moment as she was passing and looking at her hands and saying, I even took a picture, as a matter of fact, of her hands. But I remember thinking to myself, my mother's hands have not stopped working since, I mean, she was working when she was a little girl. And she helped everybody, and it was just constantly help. So for me, I can love the idea that the season for her hands to rest, and for as much work as her hands did nonstop, I can stop and have some appreciation and love that her hands are resting. I don't know if that makes sense or not. But that place and the work of her hands is like, okay, so then as my friend talks about celebrating, she shared her particular instance. And on that, I'm not there. I'm not there yet, but just walking through the concept, her mother, she would always take her flowers or this or that and the other on her mother's birthday. So she continues the tradition in a celebratory way by just randomly picking a nursing home where people that would be somewhere around the age of her mother, she just randomly picks a nursing home and still sends those flowers in celebration of her mother every year without fail. Yeah. And to get to that place of celebration where it's not a pain that just weighs me down and that's cutting my heart, but a place where I can celebrate my mother in some way outwardly, to celebrate who she is and what we did, and And for me, I'm sure it's going to be something with the work of her hands, because her hands, when I tell you my mother was a worker, and I mean community worker, you name it, church worker, whatever you want to put before worker, it would fit my mom. And so I'm sure that as I move towards that place of celebration, it's going to be something that's going to reflect the works of her hands. I just don't know what that is yet. And I honestly am not there yet. I'm not there yet.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the first person that passed in my family that I know that impacted me was my grandmother, my mother's mother. And I was a freshman in college. And she had cancer. She had spent roughly 80 plus days in the hospital. And when she passed away, as sad as I was at peace, because I knew she did not want to suffer. And her being in that hospital 80 plus days, she hated it. She was like, I just want the Lord to take me now. I do not want to be in the hospital all these days. And one of the last conversations she had, and she and I had, was of her saying, you don't like seeing me like this. I was like, because I know you don't like being like this. And she was like, you're right. I don't like being like this, but I'm at peace with whatever it is that God wants to do, because I'm ready to go. And she lived another, I don't know how many days after that. And when she passed, I had an overwhelming sense of peace and calm. Now, when the realization of her really being gone hit me, it took me a long time to recover from that, because, I mean, that's my grandmother. We were thick as thieves. I was at her house more than I was at home. So, you know, I was a shadow under her until as long as I've been alive, when she was alive. So that, it took me years to even go to the cemetery. And if I think about it, talk about it too long, I am going to cry, because I still miss her. So, but I had peace about the fact that I know where she is. I know that she's not suffering. And for that, I'm grateful. But that does not take away the fact that I miss her dearly.
Yes.
Then there's others where I just outright question and am mad about it. Why did it have to go down like this? Every time we see something on the news, every time we hear another report, you know, it pains me to hear that there are people in our Twitch community that have had their children murdered. I mean, that just bothers me. And I grieve alongside. And that's one of the things that Stephen talked about in his, like, it's been years since his brother passed, and he kept one of his belts, not even realizing he was keeping the belt. And one day his son needed a belt, and the one he had didn't fit, and he reached in his closet and said, "Here, try this one," and it fit. And his wife's like, "Where'd you get that belt from?" He's like, "Oh, that's Peter's belt." And his wife started to cry because he couldn't even put the emotion behind it, that he had been carrying this belt with him since he was 10. He's had his brother's belt, not knowing if he would ever use it, if he was just keeping it. He's moved a bazillion times, yet he's kept this one thing of his brother's with him. And now to be able to give it to his son, his wife was able to grieve for him because he couldn't even put the tears behind it. And he didn't even realize what was happening until he saw his wife cry.
Yes.
So the power of us even grieving for someone else who can't grieve in that moment.
Yes.
I thought was very powerful in his he talks about it as awareness. He's like, I don't know when I came to understand all of this. It's like stuff just kind of came together over the course of these 40 years since he's lost his dad. And because he lost his dad and his brothers on the same day. And then he lost his mom some years later.
Wow.
So, but he said things kind of stopped for him at 10. It's like everything before that is kind of like in black and white. And if he hears certain songs, it takes him right back. If he looks at certain things, he had forgotten what his dad's voice sounded like. I mean, just things like that. So, and even his brothers. And that's when they had those recorders, you know, those little box recorders that you put the tape in, you had to push the, and this is dating myself, but I was little when this was going on, where you push the record and the play at the same time.
Yes.
And he would record, he got one of those for Christmas, he would record just random stuff around the house. And he was listening to some of those and realized that he had recorded his brother's voice.
Yes.
Some 30 some odd years later. So any other thoughts, family? I know I did a whole bunch of talking in that.
No.
Just thinking about this idea of learning to love the thing that you hated the most that happened. I don't know how true that is for us as people of color.
The person that I'm dealing with, my friend, is a person of color, you know, so I don't know that it's something that cannot happen for us. I just think it's a more difficult journey to get there because I think you hit the nail on the head. We have so much PTSD and trauma from other directions and other angles. It's hard to recalibrate yourself when you're constantly being bam, 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 bam. And my cousin Mary also added my uncle, who's very close to us as well, also passed in that same year. That year was just unbelievable. That it was just like so many things just back to back to back to back that would not stop, with major family members passing and leaving. I think for me, Kim, too, there's thank you for those roaring biddies, SK8843. I appreciate you for that. And for those that came in, stay lifted. So glad to see you. SK8843, Joanna G, I see you. So much love coming to you. Thank you for coming in. We absolutely appreciate you for being here with us on today. I think that when I think about the scripture, you know, and I try not to get real religious when you get into grief and grieving, because sometimes we can make religion just so ridiculously unreal. And I'm not, you know, you understand what I'm saying? And I am a woman of the cloth. I am a woman of the cloth, but sometimes we can make religion so unreal that we really don't give an opportunity for people to grieve, because the things that we say are just so, to me, in some ways, insensitive to the fact that this person has lost a loved one. But the idea of being able to come to a point where you weep when a child is born and you rejoice when someone transitions to the terrestrial planes, trying to take that, however, and bring it into some kind of balance. I don't think that's going to happen right away. But even again, as my friend is trying to encourage me toward the celebratory concept of not having so much hurt, pain. Now, I'm gonna feel all of that because that's real stuff. That's my mama. That's my nephew. You know, these are people that extremely, extremely close to me. And I think in that way, sometimes we have to back up and say, how long is as long as it takes? You know, I feel sometimes try to nudge us into a little window and a span of time. And okay, that's long enough. No, it's not. It's not. It's not until I'm done. Don't rush me. You know.
And the truth of the matter is, there's no done or end date when it comes to grief. The trauma healing class that I do, they liken grief to like these neighborhoods where you have the death or the crisis or the trauma that happens, and then you go into the neighborhood of denial and anger, and you can walk around in there for a while, and then you might go to the next neighborhood of no hope where you're numb, you don't feel like there's a reason for you to go on. You just just don't feel no kind of way about nothing. You're just crying all the time. You lose focus. Some people stop doing things that they know they're supposed to do, but they just don't feel it physically in their body. They just don't have the energy.
Yes.
Even really move, and do anything because they're just in the space that they're in. And then eventually you can get to this neighborhood of new beginnings, which is where I think this celebration lives. It's where you can begin new rituals and other things and revisit some things you used to, and not necessarily not cry, but not have the pain be as heavy. But the truth of the matter is, you can get to new beginnings and still come back to anger, which is what I think is the journey for us as people of color, is that every time another thing happens, we back in that neighborhood of denial and anger. Like, I can't believe this happened again.
Yes.
Then you go over no hope, because like how much more can we take? We can't take much more of this, yet here comes another one. So it's this constant cycle.
Yes.
And even when you venture into the other thing, doesn't mean you don't. It's not a straight line, and once you're there, you're there. It's a roller coaster, curves, mountains, valleys, everything.
Yes.
And the danger is what we call this false bridge, where we think we can go from the crisis or the issue straight over into the new beginnings without going through the danger, the anger, or the no hope. So you got to go through it, and there's no exit ramp out.
Yes. Kim, I'm going to take you out for a second. You're breaking up on the sound. I'm going to take you out for just a second, and I'm going to bring you back and see if we can correct that.
Okay.
But you're right on point. You're right on point. Thank you guys for hanging with us on that sound. Let me see if I can pull this together, because she's dropping some jewels right here. She really, really is. Just a moment. So as she often says, it can be like whack-a-mole. Let me try that and see. Let's see how we go there, Kim. Let's see where we are.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Okay, that sounds better. That sounds much better.
Okay.
And even as you were saying, that's good. Everybody's saying that's good.
Okay.
So you likened it at the very onset of Good Grief to the journey being like whack-a-mole. Or you gave us that graphic picture where it just looks like somebody scribbled all over the place. The grief, the way we want to package it, is nice and has just a very definite pattern to it. And but listen, at the end of the day, it's just all over the place. And I think we have to give ourselves that leeway to understand it's nice. It's not that nice, pretty package that everybody wants to try to make it be, especially the church. And I'm probably hard on church because I come from the church and I'm still very much entrenched in church. But I just have to say, man, we can do some real damage to people while they're trying to grieve, because we're trying to push them from A to Z in 2 seconds or less. And it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. The problem with church people is that they think that there is an answer for everything, and that you can search the scripture and there's just an answer for it. Just you need to look in the scripture. The Lord has already given us everything we need that pertains to life and godliness. But in the midst of grief, it's messy.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't want to be involved with people that are going through something messy or hard.
That's true.
And so when they engage with someone that's grieving, it's easier to just say a scripture or to throw out some nonchalant, canned response versus just being present. Because really, we don't need you to say nothing.
True.
If you don't know what to say, it's better for you just not to say anything.
Absolutely.
Because you're going to do more damage than be helpful. And, you know, we have to unpack all of that stuff.
Yes.
These things that people throw out that they've been told. One woman because my group started on Wednesday, and her mother said something so traumatic to her. I was like, I cannot, I had to clutch my own pearls. Like, your mama said that to you? I mean, just some of these things that people say out of their own brokenness and out of not really wanting to learn how to be a healing presence.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of being a disciple is to learn how to discern what you should and shouldn't do.
Come on.
And part of that is just, if you don't know, sit, listen, and wait for the Spirit to tell you what to do. But don't say nothing just to say you said something.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of that with church folk.
And while you're there, Kim, people don't realize this. There is power in silence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people don't espouse to that, particularly in the church arena, because if it gets too quiet, the preacher will rebuke you. It's quiet in here. It's too quiet in here.
Yes.
People are uncomfortable with silence, but there is a power in silence and just feeling and sensing and turning on that sensory perception that doesn't have to do with verbal communication. We rely so heavily on that. But sometimes you just need to be quiet, and the room needs to be quiet. It needs to be still. And you can tell when people can't take it, because the longer that silence goes on, it's almost like, somebody gonna bust out and break that silence because they just can't take it. Mm-hmm. We have not taught ourselves, or even if I say disciplined ourselves, to be quiet. But sometimes quiet is the best healing that you can have.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Absolutely.
Interject that.
Absolutely. I learned that doing what's called clinical pastoral education, CPE, where you had to go into crisis situations as a chaplain and sit with folks in crisis. And the people are going to, depending on the crisis, maybe looking to you to have a solution. And you need to go in the room knowing, I don't have a solution.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the answer to nothing going on in this room. I'm not the doctor. I'm not the attorney. I'm not any of those things that can actually help. I just bring and represent the presence of God in this space. And really all them folk need you to do is listen.
That's all.
That's really all they need you to do. Sometimes prayer isn't even required. You just need to be present with people. And if church people could learn how to be quiet, because to your point, pastors get sideways when it's 2 seconds too long of silence in any space. And so we learn to fill the space when really healing is done in silence.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to have peace, quiet, and get comfortable being in that. But that does take practice.
Yes, it does.
Learn how to sit in quiet.
Yes. Yes. And I think it's more prevalent that we're not accustomed to that in the Black community, even more so. It's constantly noise, constantly movement, constantly something going on. Mm-hmm. I did find this and continue on, Kim. You're doing a powerful, powerful job. I found that you shared with us at the very beginning. I had to scroll back to find it. But that right there is so powerful loss and hurt, and then getting to the adjustment of that loss, while we many times want to take that stage of grief and say how beautiful that curve is right there. Isn't that just marvelous? But the actual experience is what you see on that other side. And I just wanted to pull that out because you've shared that with us in the past, and I still think that's a very, very powerful depiction to visualize what grief really is.
Yeah. I just wanted to go back and look at some of the comments. So Jackie 0722 said, it took me 31 years to celebrate my mother's death while I was going through breast cancer recovery in 2014. Her funeral was on my 19th birthday. Every birthday since, I've celebrated her, giving me strength and having understanding that this had to happen to make me the woman I am today. Yeah. Because once a death occurs, you're never the same person after that.
Correct.
And to think that you can just go back to the way things were, not so. It changes you forever, because this person that was integral in your life is now gone. And so now you have, and one of the ladies on Wednesday, her son's name was BJ. She said, I now describe life as before BJ and after BJ, like before BJ passed and after BJ passed. And her son's death is relatively new. I think he passed away in February. So, and she's done a lot of work just being a Stephen minister. We have what's called Stephen ministers that walk alongside people who could be going through anything, life crisis, grief, divorce, just having a hard time. And they walk with an individual for as long as they're needed. And so she's done that, but now she's a person in need of some support, and she's lost siblings, but there's nothing like losing a child. So this is a new type of grief that she's having right now.
Yes.
Let's see what else we got. Yes. The religious things people say can really derail the grieving process. I was completely derailed. Yeah. Church people need to learn to just shut up. If I could just get a t-shirt to wear at the funeral. If you don't know what to say, don't say nothing. Matter of fact, just don't say nothing. Let's see what else. Yeah. This whole notion of celebration and coming to a place of learning to love it, I'm not sure if I buy into that. Then the second thing he said after that was, what punishments of God are not gifts. What punishments of God are not gifts? Well, first of all, as a pastor, I don't believe God punishes us because of death. God is not up there punishing people,
right?
Causing people to die as a punishment. That's not how the Lord works. Life happens. We live in a broken, failed world with a whole lot of stuff going on. And somebody deciding to go up to somebody and just shoot them because of the color of their skin ain't got nothing to do with the Lord. Got everything to do with evil. So I don't know if I understand that either or agree with that. But what he talked about is like it's a gift to exist. And with existence comes suffering. And Anderson asked him, did he really believe that? And he was like, he's looking at it from a totality of life, and that life includes all things, including suffering as a result of loss. So if you can accept the joys, you have to also accept the suffering that comes along with it. I can look up you can Google Stephen Ministry, and different churches have Stephen ministers. So you may want to try to find one in your area to see if they have Stephen ministers at a church close to you. Because I know our church used to only do members, but when the new pastor came, it was like, why do we do that? Because there's people in and out of the church that need help. And if we got people just sitting around, why can't we help everybody? Help. So now anybody can call our church and get a Stephen minister.
That's nice. That's very nice.
So any thoughts about that? Just this idea?
That part I can't really wrap my brain around. It's a stretch.
It
is a stretch for me. That one, I think it kind of leaves me in the dust. I can't really.
How I made sense of all of this, I'm like, okay, this is one white man's opinion. This is one grieving white man's opinion. And as they say, look at it all, eat the meat, leave the bones. So whatever makes sense for you, glean it. And if it doesn't, girl, leave that stuff on the floor, keep it moving. So that was one of those. Hey, John.
Culturally, and you touched on it, and I think people don't want to make a difference between the two. But culturally, I don't think you can not address the differences in the culture and I'm gonna go back to the point that you made from the very beginning, as well as other things, but still relating to the same root. We've been traumatized. We have a different level and a different type of trauma. So it's not, I can hear it. I can embrace the concept. I can see where you're coming from, but I need you to put your toes and your corns and your bunions over in my shoes for a minute and walk my journey for a minute. And I bet you're going to come up with a different, story. And that's just the way I feel about it. And I may be warped, but that's how I feel about it.
No, you're not warped at all. That was the same sentiment I was getting. I was like, because of course, as a womanist theologian, you're always going to be looking at things through the lens of what does it mean to be a Black woman, and how are we having the same, all of us are having the same experience, but the filter that we have and what we bring comes through this vessel that we walk around in. And the experiences that we've had could shade it a little bit differently than if we were over here. And so I'm always going to look at, okay, that's the fact that this is this over here, but I'm having a whole totally different experience over here, because with that comes all the other stuff that I bring. The generational things, the historical things that come with that. And so the only thing next thing, let's just move on. Next thing. Gratitude.
I was trying.
Yeah. He talked about gratitude for the pain of grief. And then he went on to say, he's like, how, because of course Anderson is asking him, how can you say you're grateful for this pain? And he went on to say, well, I'm grateful for their lives. I'm grateful that, that was my dad, and those were my brothers, and that was my mother. And I'm grateful for the time that I had with them. Am I grateful that they're gone? No. Am I grateful for how it happened? Absolutely not. Am I grateful for, that they weren't here longer? No. But there are things that you can be grateful for. We in November, is Thanksgiving around the corner. Everybody talking about, what are you grateful for? Well, I am grateful for a lot of things. And I am grateful that my grandparents were mine. And the people that I have lost, that I had that type of relationship with them, so much so that I miss them as much as I do. But am I grateful for them not being here? Not at all. Not at all. I mean, I guess you could flip it, but.
Now I have a different angle on that one. I'll say, and I'm going to bring it into my parents particularly. My dad had a stroke at 50, and for 10 years he was incapacitated and passed away at 60, which is young. That's extremely young. 10 years of watching my dad not be able to communicate, and he was a preacher and he also was a postal worker, but you asked him, his profession is I'm a man of God, and very, very devout and upright. There's just this, and my dad, oh my God, there's just nobody like my dad. And my mom right there in the footsteps as well. Having seen both of them in the state of decline that they were, I will say there is that gratitude. And I think ultimately, my sisters are here. Ultimately, all of us, one by one, especially with my dad, had a conversation with him, unbeknownst to the other. We didn't know it, but each one of us had a conversation with my dad. Was he ready to go? And he was like, yes. He was, for all purposes, trapped in that body for 10 years. Mm-hmm. The last one and my mom said this after my dad passed. She said when she saw him after he'd had the last stroke, he had another one in that 10th year that actually took him out. Mm-hmm. And she said when she saw him unable to basically move anything, because prior to that, it was just the one side that was affected. When she saw he was not able to move anything, she was like, if you're ready to go, I'm ready for you to go. So I think that I can have gratitude for my grief there, because I felt it was merciful of God to release him from that body. I mean that. And that's not I had to work towards that. We were at his sister. I was leading the family down the aisle at 10 o'clock for his sister's funeral when my dad died. Literally 10 o'clock. I'm marching the family down the aisle in the processional, and 10 o'clock, my dad left this earth. So it's like that same morning when we got back to Kansas City and found out that he had expired, for me, there was relief. Mm-hmm. And for me, there was a gratitude that he was released from that, because at that point and long before, for me, it just felt like torture. Mm-hmm. And my dad was a very vibrant man. He was a very articulate man, but he could not talk during that 10-year span. He could say no and something that sounded close to yes, but it wasn't even actually yes. But other than that, he was relegated to no speech. He was very active. It just was like he was trapped in that body. And why would we want him to continue to be trapped? Mm-hmm. And I'll say a daddy's girl. Anybody that you talk to will tell you I was a daddy's girl. At some point, it started feeling like cruelty. And I know for some that may sound odd, but it started feeling like cruelty. So there was a tremendous amount of gratitude. And then even with my mother and the type of decline that she had, it was same for me in that regard, even though ultimately nobody ever lives long enough. I don't care if they're 110, you still ain't ready for them to go. Mm-hmm. So if God gave her 10 more years, if God gave her 20 more years, after that 20 years that had expired, it still wasn't going to be long enough as far as I was concerned. That's my mother. So I just, SK 8843 is my sister. Mm-hmm. Sister Helen was the one that died literally 3 days before he did, and I was doing her funeral when. So they're in the statement that SK said she felt like our Aunt Helen actually came to come get her baby brother, and they left. And my dad was the baby of the family, and all of his siblings doted on him, every last one of them, because his mother died in childbirth. I think I shared that story at some point. Mm-hmm. Very, very horrendous story when they were not treating Black women and just let her bleed to death. So the family always doted on him, and they were all very, very close to him. And so even in that statement that SK is saying, the idea that his big sister came to get her little brother, I'm cool with that. It just, he was suffering. He was suffering in that body. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's the same thing that Dendarn said, the same way I felt with my granny. I love and miss her to no end, but when I saw her suffering, to see the pain she was going through, as well as the dementia, I whispered to her, it's all right.
Yes.
She can sleep now, and she did.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's how I felt about my grandmother. I mean, I knew she did not. She always used to say to us, I do not want to suffer. So if I got to suffer, I just want to go on and go.
Yes.
And 80 days in the hospital, she didn't want to be in there.
Yes.
So I had peace about it, but that doesn't mean I don't miss her.
Yes. And it's interesting that as the three sisters, BTD mom, SK 8843, as we talked, we realized that we all had given my dad verbal permission to go. The last one to let him go was my mom. Mm-hmm. And I think even my mom had gone to the funeral, but even while the funeral and we went to the cemetery, she refused to get out of the car. We made a beeline back. I felt like he snuck away while my mom was there, because otherwise I feel like he knew my mom was not going to release him, even though she had said, you know, if you're ready to go, I'm ready to let you go, when he had that last stroke and was just nothing there but facial movement. But I felt like he slipped away, whether it was for her or whether it was for him. In that little window of time that we were at his sister's funeral, he slipped away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Someone else said they had a similar, let's see, did I see that? Yeah, John Studio says same when my dad passed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I can relate to the gratitude side. You know,
when you mention it from that perspective, yeah. Now that I think is the only one, my grandmother, that I could say that about. Everybody else, I got questions. I got questions.
Mm-hmm.
I need to have. Me and Jesus, or me and them and Jesus gonna have a conference call or a meeting when I get up there, so we can discuss it.
I hear you.
We're gonna have a discussion about it.
I hear you.
Yeah. All right. Let's see what else. He just talked about the awareness of the world changed for him when his dad and his brothers passed away. They were in a plane crash on September 11th, 1974. And everything I always said, Dad, you know, from that point forward, it was, when Dad and the boys passed away.
Yes.
The two were lumped together, and they were on their way to, I think, play baseball or something. And so he said it's just stuck in his mind, the last memory of them like grabbing all their baseball stuff. And so in their mind, they're always like trying to get their baseball stuff together, because that's the last memory that they have. And so he was kind of stuck in that moment for a long time.
Yes.
And that he would have these flashes of these memories, and that everything before then seemed to just kind of be in black and white for him.
Yeah. And that kind of scenario, I think back to extended family on my grandfather's side. He had a sibling who, the Wilkerson family had 5 deaths in an automobile accident, and there were 5 caskets from adults to little children just stretched out across that front of the church. That man, it's when you say that's life-changing, that's life-changing. Dr. Dady, good to have you with us, and tell your stylist I'm so glad she's listening, and we're glad to have her as well. Auntie Diddy, so much love to you. John, anybody else that we missed coming in while we were talking. Hello, everyone. But man, when you have those multiple deaths at the same time, it's just, you know.
Yeah.
When I talk about the 4 that we had back to back to back, and really, as MCP 812 said, her dad, who was my dad's brother, same year. And then my mom had a sister-in-law who also within that same time window. So, I mean, by the time you pull in from both sides of the family, it's just insane. But when you think about, like he said, my dad and my brother at the same time, that's powerful. That's really something.
Yeah, 2 brothers.
Yeah.
So 3 people total. And I remember I was just out of college. We were watching the news and saw a shooting, a murder-suicide at Callaway Gardens here in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, me and my mom was like, hope it's not anybody we know, because like we have family near there in Pine Mountain, Georgia. And anybody in my family that lived in Pine Mountain, Georgia had worked at some point at Callaway Gardens. And then 2 hours later, the phone rings. And it is my cousin's. So my cousin was separated from her husband. She was dating some man. They went to go pick up my other cousin from work at Callaway Gardens. He murdered one of them, the girlfriend, on the way. And then when he picked up the other cousin, he murdered her and then murdered himself. So that was a 2 casket funeral, and I refused to go because I was like, I can't do it.
So what would you, for those of us that have gone through those kinds of experiences, and they are definitely traumatic and it's definitely transformative, you will never be the same again. So what would you, in context to what this brother's saying about coming to celebration and so on and so forth, I think that sometimes we're struggling, and especially when you have several back to 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 back. That's a lot. That's a lot. I appreciate Stacy Blessed One being with us on today, and so much love that I continue to feel in my heart towards her, and so much love to you, sis. But when you've had those back to back to backs, any.
The only thing that I can say is that I would, if it were me, I would seek out some professional support, because that's a lot to process, because you're literally grieving multiple people at the same time. So to grieve one person is heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Grieve two is heavier. Then you add 3, 4, 5, however many you got to add. That's a lot of weight to carry. And so DJ Droopy talks about how he is in therapy now because he lost 7 people in 1 year. And at the time, it may be more than that. The therapist that he's going to see, he's now a case study because of just the amount of people that he lost in a span of time. And that it helps you to have to, because you can't, it may help you to compartmentalize it, but it's hard to do that because everything is happening all at once.
Yeah.
So, I mean, faith helps. Yes, it does. But I think some professional support helps even more.
Because I promise you, that 4th funeral that we were sitting in, I was in shock. I was in shell shock. I mean, you just cannot believe that in less than 2 weeks' time, you've been to 4 totally separate funerals, and everybody completely interconnected, close family members. It's just really hard to wrap your brain around that. There's a sense of, I describe it as being in shell shock.
Yeah, I mean, it helps when the family is able to pull together because you're all having a shared experience, but people grieve differently, even within in a certain family. So, and you bring you to the grieving process as well. So you have to find a space to be able to process all of that. And you can't process it all at once. So that would be my suggestion, is to find someone that specializes in grief, that's licensed, that can help you process through all of that, because it's that can be overwhelming. And I mean, I think, for us that have gone through just the stuff that we see on television, certain things I just can't watch no more. I cannot do it, because that piles on top of the last one, because I'm still grieving the one from I don't know how far back, and generational trauma that my family has endured that surfaces in ways that I don't know, you sometimes even know where that's coming from, but it's in me enough to grieve about it. Certain things that I read about our history that bring up certain things from me, and it all just lumps it all, and I'm just a big, huge mess.
Mm-hmm.
And it puts me in a mood. It puts me in a space of depression sometimes to even just go through all of that. So I have to disconnect. But every time another one surfaces, all that does is bring everything back up.
Mm-hmm.
And at any given point, I never know who I'm grieving at that moment, honestly, because there's just so much that goes on. So spaces like this, the trauma healing group that I'm doing on Wednesdays with a group of women, all of them have had loss as well as childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And 6 women just trying to process through. And again, I'm not a licensed therapist, but I've been trained in trauma healing and continue to go through and get more educated on those things to really try to help, because we just have so much.
Yes. Yes.
And processing some of it is better than processing none of it.
Yes. I can relate to a couple of the things. Stay Lifted said feeling numb. And like, listen, I get it. I told somebody the other day, I feel like I've been in a state of Novocaine, and the Novocaine is wearing off. And that's real talk. And then when you get to what Ursula said, that compound grief becomes very confusing, because at some point you can't even really identify who it is you're grieving. Because I remember one morning I got up and I felt like and thought I was grieving my mama. Before I got finished, I was on David. It's just like, it's just everywhere. So it can be very, very confusing, and just really trying to process it all. And where I might be in this place with mom, I'm in some place totally different with David, and I'm in some place totally different with, you know what I'm saying? By the time you sit down and try to figure out, where is this coming from and who is this for? It's like there's so many, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. You just have to give it enough time to manifest to see which one it is, because otherwise I don't know.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, I've just learned at this point that whatever I'm crying about, that's what I need to cry about right now. Whoever that's for, whatever that's for. Okay. Let's just go with it, because I have no idea who I'm grieving in any given moment.
Yes. And yes. Thank you all for sharing in the chat. Thank you for sharing.
Just a sidebar, because everybody going to see Wakanda Forever, but people are going to be grieving in this movie, because the movie also addresses the loss of Chadwick Boseman. And whether we knew him personally or not is irrelevant. Black Panther, he forever will be Black Panther, and he left a mark on us as a culture. That, you know, when they have whatever ritual they have in the movie, I'm already bringing at least 3 packs of tissue with me. And I dare anybody say anything to me about it in that movie.
Oh, I do the ugly cry on movies.
I'm just not even. Because I got a luncheon tomorrow at 11, the movie's at 3:10, and then I was supposed to have a dinner that got moved to 9 o'clock that now I'm not going to, because 9 o'clock is too late to be going to dinner. So that I have the rest of the afternoon to get myself together. So I was going to wear lashes and all that stuff. I will not be doing that tomorrow, because I'm going to the movie at 3:10. And so I need to be prepared for whatever I got to be prepared for. And there's no point in me putting on lashes knowing that I'm going to just pull them right on off in the midst of a Kleenex.
Listen, save yourself and your lashes.
Save my lashes and that glue.
Kim, it's been wonderful. We're a little bit over time. That's okay. This is what we do here at Good Grief, and I appreciate everybody that has come. I'm going to get ready for however you want to wrap us up here. This has been a good conversation, and thank you for bringing that video footage to us. At least gives me something to open myself up to, and that I want to say, Kim, I couldn't relate to what he was saying, and I'm saying, in my mind, because I'm definitely not there. In my mind, I'm saying, no, that ain't for me, but maybe it does need, I want to open myself and at least be aware that maybe that can be me. I don't want to just close myself off.
Yeah. I mean, so there's the whole point of the podcast is the fact that Anderson realized that he has children now. And he didn't want to not grieve in a proper way. And he knew that as a result of the loss of his dad and his brother, that he just kind of stuffed that away. He didn't really cry about it. He tried to mentally think it through and process it mentally and not with his heart. And so now that he has children, he didn't want to be that guy that didn't know how to process his emotions. So he journeyed into this path of talking to people who had been through grief. And Stephen Colbert was just one of the people that he talked to. Because when he interviewed him, he was fascinated by this statement. He was like, well, clearly I'm not there. So why are you there? You know, so just listening to other people and their journey just kind of opens us up to the fact that we are also on a journey, and that our journey may not look like that. That's that person's revelation. There are some things that I gleaned that I couldn't even get to because I was re-listening to it and making notes, and I didn't get to the good part. So maybe next week we'll get to the good part of what some of the things that he said that I did resonate with more so. But the point is to just be open to the journey and know that everybody has a grief journey story.
Yes.
And the point of us being here and talking about it hopefully helps somebody else who hasn't begun to talk about it or doesn't really know even how to engage with it. So that's our hope through Good Grief. And that, you know, again, the Win phone is out there on the Discord channel, STL's Grief Discord channel, of if you want to leave messages for your loved one. All of us have left some notes of some sort when you just need to say something or feel in some kind of way or wish they were here. It's a way to get it out that we're all using as a way to help along the journey. And I will be available today in the Discord after this if anybody wants to stop by and just add your voice to the conversation. And the podcast that we referenced earlier is this, All There Is It All There Is by Anderson Cooper. So remember to give yourself some grace as you go along this grief journey, and we'll see you here next week.
And can I just, before we go, can we just put prayer hands, bended knees, prayers for DJ Stacey Blessed One?
Yes.
If you could feel my heart for you right now.
Yes.
So much love coming to you, so much strength for this journey coming to you. I'm speechless in you know.
Yeah.
Hugs. Hugs. Just all kind of hugs coming to you. If you guys would just put the prayer hands in, even as she's journeying right now, just put those prayer hands in, put those prayer hands. My sister, we are so glad to have you here in Good Grief. And I hope you can feel the love, and I hope you can feel the prayers that these prayer hands represent towards you as you're on this journey. And your journey has been a real journey. Thoughts and prayers, sis. Nothing but thoughts and prayers coming to you. And the strength of the Lord be with you. The strength of the Lord be on you.
Yes.
And the peace of God comfort you as only God can.
Yes. And with that, we will be lifting up everybody, because if you're here, then that means you're on a journey of grief. If you're here holding space for someone else, then we give God praise for you as well. But we're here just to help one another out.
Yes.
So that you do know that you are not alone in this. So have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
We will be in Discord for those that want to come back to the Discord side. Kim Possible will be there, and I will be there also, but Kim Possible is going to be leading us. Rebel, can you put that Discord link in there? If you would, please, the Discord link. It's good to see you, DJ I Rock Jesus. Thank you so much. Good to see you, my brother. That's my brother right there. If you'd like to join us in the Discord channel, go to Discord and then go to the cafe. Go to the cafe voice channel and you can meet us there. STL Cafe voice channel. You can meet us there. So much love to you. Kim, it's always great. Thank you so much for doing what you do. I just love you, sis. I do.
Love you too.
Mad love to everybody.
Yes.
See you next
week, guys.